Can you be a Christian and still doubt? Doubt can be a very painful and disturbing thing for Christians to have. And these doubts can range widely from doubts about God, maybe his character, if he's really good. Am I really a Christian? How can I know that? How can I be confident in it? Wondering whether or not I really am. Maybe there's certain theological convictions you can doubt. Maybe you can even doubt that Jesus is who he said he was, or that there really is a God and he's really there, or that Christianity is true. So doubts can be packaged in all sorts of different forms and types and levels of severity. And I think the short answer to the question ultimately is yes, Christians can doubt. In fact, it's very common for Christians to doubt. And I would say if we're not doubting or have never gone through at least some doubts or some season of doubt, it would make me wonder if we've taken our faith seriously. So I think the short answer, yes, doubt is common. And we can even look to the scriptures and see this. If you read in just all throughout the Old Testament, you can look at Abraham and Sarah, and there's periods of them doubting whether or not God's going to fulfill his promise. You can read through the Psalms and look at David's heart, and he's questioning God and wondering where he's at and if he's going to come through. You see him renewing his hope and trust in God, but he's also wrestling with God and his character and if he's really there, if he's going to come through. We see a good example of this is in the New Testament, in the Gospels, John the Baptist, who Jesus said there's no one among men who is more righteous than John the Baptist. But yet John, when he's in prison, gets some of his disciples to go to Jesus and say, hey, can you verify for me that Jesus really is the one, that he's really the Messiah, or if we should be looking for someone else. So even John, in some of his darkest moments, had doubts. Now, doubt is not a good thing necessarily. So in one sense, it is good because we're taking seriously our faith and our trust in God, and we're wrestling with that, truths that we believe, but also how that matches up with our experience, and sometimes there's a little disparity there. So in that sense, doubt can be good, but also doubt is bad in that it's painful, in that it's a fork in the road. It's when you come to a spot and you're not moving into unbelief, but you're not at a spot where you're confidently believing. And so the book of James talks about someone who's doubting is like someone who's tossed to and fro by the waves. And as someone who has doubted myself with all sorts of different issues, I understand that feeling, and it's a terrible feeling. But doubt ultimately happens when we believe, we're in a position of belief, and maybe it's a truth claim, or maybe it's something about God, or whatever it is, and we're wrestling with our experience up to that point, whether or not it matches with that belief. And sometimes, let's say when bad things happen in our life, and we can't make sense of why God would allow this to happen. Maybe we're under some intense suffering or persecution or whatever it is, and God says that he's good, but our experience isn't necessarily matching up with what we think that goodness should look like. And it puts us potentially at a crossroads to doubt God's goodness. And that can happen. So part of what faith is clinging to, we have confidence in God and his promises, and it's clinging to those even when our current circumstances don't match up to what we would expect them to based on what we know about God. And so doubt is often a time or a season where we grow in maturity or grow in faith as we wrestle through. So some of your doubts may be emotional, like this particular one about evil and suffering in your life. Some doubts may be more intellectual as you're wrestling with questions about whether God is there and truth claims of the Bible, truth of Christianity, etc. So if you find yourself in a season of doubt, my first recommendation to you would be just not to panic. Know that doubt is normal, and it's not a position you want to stay in or live in, but it is a season that is going to require some wrestling. And some of these may be intellectual doubts, and you need to find answers and wrestle through some questions. Some of these may be more emotional in nature and are prompted by what if questions. What if I'm not a Christian? What if God isn't there? What if God isn't loving? Those sorts of questions. And some of those are a little bit intellectual, but a lot of times they're more rooted in our emotions and the thoughts that we allow to come into our mind. And there's a season where you need to wrestle with your thought life and what sort of things you let in and let out. So whatever season you find yourself in, know there's hope and encouragement that Christians do doubt, but God has given us all the resources we need to overcome those doubts.